Right now, on more than 6 million American rooftops, sits a small box most people have never looked at twice. It converts the sunlight hitting your panels into the power running your fridge, your lights, your air conditioning, quietly doing its job. At least, that is the part you were told about. Because a week ago, the United States government decided that box was dangerous enough to ban. The panels stayed legal. What they moved against was the little brain wired in behind them, and a huge share of those brains are built and can be reached from China. That box is called an inverter, and it might be the most important piece of your solar setup that you never think about. Your panels do not make the kind of electricity your house can use. They make direct current, DC, a raw, one-way flow. Your home runs on alternating current, AC. The inverter is the translator sitting in between. It takes the DC coming off your roof and flips it, tens of thousands of times a second, into clean AC the grid can actually use. No inverter, no usable power. It really is that simple. But here is what makes it far more than a translator. A modern inverter is a computer, and it is online. It talks to an app on the owner's phone, and it talks back to the company that built it. That connection is genuinely useful. It is how your installer sees that your system is healthy, how firmware updates arrive, how a utility can smooth out demand on a scorching afternoon. The catch is that the same wire that lets someone help you runs all the way back to whoever built it. Whoever sits on the far end can read what your system is doing, change its settings, and in plenty of cases, switch it off entirely. Think about that for a second. The device standing between the sun and your living room is taking instructions from somewhere else. Now scale that one box up to the whole planet, and the problem comes into focus. When it comes to inverters, the world runs on China. Two Chinese companies, Huawei and Sungrow, control roughly 55% of the global inverter market between them, which means those two firms alone ship more of these boxes than the entire rest of the planet combined. 9 of the 10 biggest inverter makers on Earth are Chinese. The top 10 together account for about 71% of everything shipped. The whole industry is effectively bolted onto Chinese hardware. And this is the part that usually gets overlooked. Remote control of these devices is not a theory somebody dreamed up. It has already happened on American soil. In November of 2024, a Chinese manufacturer called Daye reached across an ocean and remotely shut down its own inverters running in the United States, Britain, and Pakistan. Their solar simply stopped. Now, to be fair, that was not a government attack, it was a business fight. Daye was locked in a distribution dispute with its American partner, and it used its cloud access to enforce it. But sit with what that actually proved. A company on the other side of the world flipped a switch and darkened working solar systems in American homes, instantly, with no warning, and there was nothing the owners could do about it. The kill switch is not hypothetical. Somebody already pressed it. The only real question that leaves is who else can reach it, and what happens on the day the reason is not a sales contract. So why does one company holding a kill switch matter this much? Because this stopped being about a single box a long time ago. There are millions of these inverters out there now, all online, all speaking the same language, all reachable in principle at the same moment. On its own, any one of them barely registers on the grid. But put enough of them together and you get a power plant's worth of capacity parked at the very edge of the network. If a big enough share of them switched off at the same instant on the same signal, that sudden hole in supply is exactly the kind of shock that can throw a grid off balance and cascade into a blackout. That is the scenario that keeps security officials awake at night. A whole country blinking at once, on a command that came from somewhere else. Which is why, this year, Washington stopped talking and moved. At the end of July 2026, the Federal Communications Commission added foreign-made power inverters to its covered list. In plain terms, it banned new Chinese inverter models from being approved for the American market, citing the risk that a foreign firm could, in the government's own words, turn off the inverters or use them to collect and pull out data. It ran the same playbook the FCC had already used on Chinese-made drones and routers. And notice what the ban does not do. It does not rip the millions of Chinese inverters already on American roofs back out. Those stay right where they are. America is not alone here, and it is not even first. Lithuania already banned Chinese companies from remotely reaching its solar and wind systems. The European Commission moved to shut Chinese inverters out of publicly funded energy projects. More than 200 gigawatts of Europe's solar already runs on Chinese hardware, and the continent is scrambling to draw a line under it. Even a United States Marine base, Camp Lejeune, had its Chinese-made batteries pulled out over the very same fear. One by one, governments are landing on the same uncomfortable conclusion about the hardware holding up their grids. But this is where the story gets stranger. In 2025, Reuters reported that American experts taking these devices apart had found something that was not supposed to be there. Communication hardware, in some cases hidden cellular radios tucked inside certain Chinese inverters and listed in no manual anywhere, undocumented backdoors, at least in theory, that could let a signal slip straight past the firewalls utilities build to keep China out. If that sounds alarming, it should. It is also exactly where honesty has to kick in. Because when the United States Department of Energy actually pulled about 30 of these units onto a bench and examined them, it did not find a smoking gun. Its verdict was no definitive evidence of malicious hardware. It did find 2 cases where a device communicated in ways its paperwork never mentioned, but investigators called those non-malicious and unintentional. So the hidden bomb in the chip, the version built for a scary thumbnail, has not been proven. Not yet, anyway. And that is the real point, the one that is so easy to lose under the fear. The danger was never really a secret radio. The danger is the dependence itself. We wired the edge of the power grid, millions of connected devices, onto hardware we do not build, do not fully control, and cannot completely audit. The capability to reach in and switch things off from far away is simply there, proven, sitting in the design. Whether anyone ever chooses to use it against us is a separate question, and honestly, a hopeful one, but you do not get to answer it. That decision lives somewhere else. And that dependence, humming away in millions of American homes, is what a country finally decided it could no longer afford. If you are the kind of person who likes understanding the machinery the modern world runs on before the headlines catch up to it, subscribe. That is the whole reason this channel exists. So the next time you drive past a roof lined with solar panels, remember the part nobody photographs. The little box behind them, doing essential, invisible work and listening for instructions from a very long way away. Millions of them, humming along, waiting. Here is the question I keep coming back to. If the switch already exists, does it really matter that nobody has flipped it for real yet? Tell me where you land in the comments.